couple of years ago, we started investigating the acid milling dyes, where we just start off with our three basic primary colours, just our red, blue and yellow. And by mixing these colours, we were able to achieve many of the colours that we had not been able to produce with the vegetable dyes. A lot of the red, orange colours, turquoises, blues and purples are extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get from natural sources. Not only can we achieve virtually any colour, but we could also control the tone of it. We can make them very pastel colours, or we can make them very intense colours. And this gave a new exciting dimension to the garments that we were making. We found we could dye the fleece, and we could dye the fleece using the different colours and allowing them to blend in the dye pot, which lent a certain element of sort of mystery and surprise to it, because you never really were quite sure what colours were coming out. And when we spun the fleece, we finished up with this beautiful multicoloured yarn, which could then either be used on its own or plied maybe with a single strand of grey or white or black. And this also gave a very unusual effect to the yarns. So this was where we started working with it, and we found that people kept on asking us to show them how to do it. And so about 12 months ago we decided that we would begin to run workshops. And the first workshop we ran, we picked a group of people that had been through our spinning classes that worked very well together, and we felt that if we were going to produce a total disaster, that we could sort of face it with these people. And it turned out to be extremely successful. So we decided we would go on and run another one. But the next one, I think all the disasters that should have happened in the first place happened in the second workshop. And apart from nearly setting the place on fire, we had just about every single thing you can imagine went wrong. So at that stage I decided that the only way we were going to pursue the workshops was to set it up in as safe a manner as we could, and that was when I decided I would provide myself all the gas stoves and the equipment with which to do it, so that I could have it all set up and checked before the people came. And people come along and bring along their 30 skeins of wool, which give them a fairly comprehensive sample range from which to work. And they start off and dye all those skeins of wool using the accuracy that you get from a glass measuring pipette. And when they've dyed their 30 skeins of wool, we show them how to do the fleece, just sort of pouring the dye into the fleece so they can then spin their patchy types of yarn. And that's how we run the workshops. They just people come along and we've got everything set up. We have the warm water with the acetic acid solution in which to soak their skeins. So they come along and stuff all their wool into the bucket, and it's then ready to use. We explain how to use the pipettes, how to read the measurements on the pipettes, because we don't really use them in a conventional manner. And after practicing to use and control the flow of dye from the pipettes, they then just work from the formula that we have. We've written out 29 formula, and they work out themselves the 30th, and they work through those to get their 30 different colours. They start off sort of measuring the dye into the amount of water. we use 30 times the weight of wool in water. So if we're using 10 gram skeins, we use 300 ml of water. Then we measure the dye into the dye bath, add 3 ml of acetic acid, which is the activating agent, add the wet skein of wool after it's been squeezed out, and while gently sort of turning the wool over, we bring it to the boil. And as the water comes to the boil, the dye is then taken up into the wool at this stage. Now, theoretically, the skein of wool should be simmered for about 45 minutes to ensure total penetration of the wool by the dye. But because we want to get through all the different colours, I'm afraid we're not always terribly orthodox, and we wait until the water clears and remove the wool at that stage. And then these skeins are labelled with the people's initial, the number of the skein, the formula used, and that label's tied onto the skein of wool before we hang them out in our little rainbows on the line.